I know I'm in a novel the moment I see the ceiling. It's not a modern ceiling. There's no water stain in the corner that I've been meaning to ask the landlord about. No faint rectangle where someone once mounted a shelf. This ceiling is carved plaster, painted ivory, and there is a chandelier above me with actual candles in it, unlit, dripping last night's wax in neat little frozen rivers. I lie there for a long moment, very still. The way you do when you're calculating. I've read this book. I know exactly who I am. Vera Ashmont, 22, the daughter of a powerful family. The girl the story writes as the obstacle. The beautiful, cold, scheming woman who torments the heroine, pursues the male lead with a jealous desperation that borders on pathological, and eventually humiliates herself publicly before being removed from the narrative like a splinter. I know how this ends for Vera Ashmont. I am not going to let it end that way. The door opens without knocking, which tells me immediately that the person entering has either authority or familiarity, and when I see Iris. 19, quick-eyed, carrying a breakfast tray with the practiced efficiency of someone who's worked much harder jobs than this one, I revise that assessment. Familiarity. And something else. She sets the tray on the bedside table and looks at me, and there is a fractional pause, the kind that happens when a person expects one thing and gets another. "You're quiet this morning," she says. "I'm thinking," I say. "You're never quiet when you're thinking." She tilts her head. "You're usually already talking. This is, I suspect, accurate for the Vera who woke up in this body yesterday. The Vera who had plans, schemes, a very specific attachment to a man named Dominic Hale, and a very specific contempt for a woman named Celeste Marlowe." I pick up the teacup. It's good tea, which surprises me, because my first life I drank whatever was cheapest, and this is objectively better. "Tell me about the gala," I say. Iris goes very still. It's a subtle stillness. She doesn't stop moving, exactly, she just slows. The way water slows before it turns to ice. And I file that away. "Which aspect?" she says carefully. "The engagement announcement." The stillness becomes something else. She looks at me the way people look at something they're not sure is a trap. "The one your mother has been planning for 3 months. "That one, yes." "Dominic Hale," she says, watching me. "You've been," she stops. "Wanting it," I say. "I know." Past tense. The quality of the silence in the room changes completely, and I think, there she is. There's the person under the trained servant. She's looking at me like I've said something in a language she didn't expect me to speak. 14 days, I say. That's how long I have before it becomes official. "Before you get what you've always wanted," she says, very carefully. "Before I get what she wanted," I say, and I watch Iris's face, and I decide in that moment, with the candle wax dripping frozen above me and the tea warming my hands, that this is the person I'm going to trust. "Sit down," I say. "I need to tell you something strange. Here is what the story wants from me. It wants me to be threatened by Celeste Marlowe. It wants me to sabotage her in small, petty ways that make me look worse each time. It wants me to cling to Dominic Hale with increasing desperation as he slowly gravitates toward her, because that is what villainesses do. They hold on harder the more clearly they should let go, and the holding on is what destroys them. I am not going to do that, not because I'm noble. I want to be clear about this. I am not a good person performing a redemption arc. I am a practical person who has read this story and seen how it ends. And I would like to end it differently. Iris listens to all of this with the expression of someone being told. The sky is a different color than they thought it was. She doesn't interrupt. When I finish, there is a long pause, in which the candles get lit by a housemaid who doesn't look at either of us, and the room fills with that warm, uncertain light. "So you're not her," Iris says finally. "I'm in her body. It's complicated. You're not going to scheme against Celeste. No. You're not going to." She stops. Tries again. "You genuinely don't want Dominic Hale." "I genuinely have never met Dominic Hale," I say. "I've read about him. He seems like a lot of work." Something happens in Iris's face, a small private thing. a suppressed expression that in a less controlled person would have been a laugh, and I think, yes, there, she's in. What do you want? She asks. To get out of the engagement without losing the inheritance. To get out of the story without playing the part. I set down the teacup, and ideally to not be publicly humiliated in the process, though I'm aware that may be optimistic. Your mother, Iris says, is not going to let that happen quietly. No, I agree. She's not. Margaret Ashmont is the part of this plan that keeps me up at night. She's not a villain in the story. She's barely in it, really. Just a background presence, a name attached to social pressure and financial control. But in the 3 days I have spent in this body, I have learned that she is formidably intelligent, politically connected, and absolutely certain that this engagement is happening. She arranged it. She spent months arranging it. She called in favors for it. She will not hear the word no, which means I cannot say it directly, which means I need a different approach. The gala is in 14 days, I say. If I walk in on Dominic Hale's arm and allow the announcement, it's done. So I need to make sure that doesn't happen without being the one who breaks it. He needs to be the one who steps back. Iris stares at me. You want him to reject you. I want him to lose interest, I say, which is different and considerably more elegant. How do you make someone who's been told you're his fiancé lose interest in 14 days? I think about this. About the Dominic Hale of the novel. Brooding, magnetic, the kind of man who has been wanted by everyone for so long that being wanted has become the texture of the air around him. Who is drawn, inexorably, toward the one person who isn't performing for him. I stop performing, I say. I meet Dominic Hale at my mother's Sunday salon, where he arrives exactly on time, which Iris has informed me is unusual for him, which means he is making an effort, which means the engagement matters to him in some way I haven't fully mapped yet. He is, I will grant, exactly as the book described. Dark-haired, broad-shouldered, with the particular quality of stillness that very confident people have. The kind of stillness that isn't absence but presence, a room-filling quietness. He looks at me across the parlor, and I watch something shift in his expression, a small recalibration, and I realize he was expecting something specific, and I am not quite delivering it. Good. I give him a pleasant smile. Not warm, not inviting, not the loaded, meaningful look that the Vera in this story would have used like a weapon. Just pleasant. The smile I would give an acquaintance I'm glad to see but not overwhelmed by. He crosses the room. Miss Ashmont. Mr. Hale. I let the smile settle and then drift naturally into attention on the person beside him. A middle-aged man I don't recognize, someone's uncle, and ask him something polite about the roads from the county. I feel Dominic Hale adjust beside me. It's subtle. A micro-movement, a slight shift of weight, the way a person moves, when they expect a door to open and find it unlocked, but not swinging toward them. He stays in the conversation. He's perfectly gracious. And when the uncle drifts away toward the refreshment table, Dominic turns to me and says, in a tone that is almost puzzled, "You seem well." "I am," I say. "A beat, are you? Looking forward to the gala." He says it the way someone says a sentence when the sentence they wanted to say was different. "It should be a nice evening," I say. Another beat, longer this time. "Vera," he says, and there's something in the use of my first name, permission he's granted himself, testing whether I'll react to it. Is something wrong? "Not at all," I say pleasantly. "Will you excuse me?" I promised Mrs. Vain I'd look at her roses. I leave. Across the room, by the window, I catch a flash of auburn hair, Felix Crane, who is apparently also at this salon, which I hadn't expected, sketching something in a small notebook and not appearing to watch me at all. He is absolutely watching me. I file that away and go look at Mrs. Vane's roses, which are legitimately quite good. Behind me, I can feel Dominic Hale's confusion like a change in atmospheric pressure, and, I think, with a satisfaction that I know is not entirely kind. Good. Let him wonder. I find Celeste Marlowe in the garden, alone, sitting on a stone bench with her hands folded and her expression composed in the particular way of someone who has been preparing for a difficult conversation since approximately dawn. She is, as advertised, lovely. Soft brown hair, wide gray eyes, the kind of face that people describe as gentle because they mean it and not as an insult. She looks up at me and goes very still in a way that I recognize. It's the stillness of someone expecting to be ambushed. I sit down on the other end of the bench. She doesn't move. "You're waiting for me to say something threatening," I say. A pause. "I'm waiting," she says carefully, "for you to say whatever you came to say. I came to look at the garden." Mrs. Vane's rose talk went longer than expected. I glance at the nearest bed. The roses are a deep red, going slightly bronze at the edges, the way they do in autumn. They're very good. Celeste is very still. "You don't have to be afraid of me," I say. Not warmly. I'm not performing warmth, that would be worse. Just plainly, I don't have any plans involving you. "You have plans involving Dominic," she says. "Actually," I say, "my plans involve getting out of the engagement without my mother disinheriting me, which is a different thing." I look at her. "He's going to end up with you. That's how this goes. I've known it for a while." She stares at me. You're not angry?" "Why would I be angry at you specifically? You didn't design the situation." Her hands unfold and refold in her lap, that unconscious gesture of someone recalibrating everything they thought they understood. I've been preparing for months," she says, quietly. "Every time I'm near you, I expect something to go wrong." "I know," I say. "I'm sorry about that, and I mean it," which surprises me a little. The Vera who lived in this body before me spent a great deal of energy making this woman's life harder, and I am sitting with the residue of that now, with the wariness in hers that I didn't cause, but inherited. I'm not going to do that anymore. Celeste looks at me for a long moment. Then she says, "What happened to you?" "I woke up," I say simply. She doesn't know what that means. But she nods, slowly, and something careful unclenches in her expression, and we sit together in the garden looking at the going bronze roses for a few minutes, not talking, which turns out to be its own kind of peace. The problem with refusing to perform is that other people are still watching. Dominic watches me the way a man watches a puzzle he's certain he can solve if he just turns it the right way. He has, since the salon, found reasons to be in the same rooms as me: the Alderton dinner, the Tuesday concert, the entirely coincidental shared carriage ride that was not coincidental at all. He is gracious, attentive, and increasingly baffled by the fact that I am not leaning toward him. He keeps testing for the heat he's used to and finding warmth, certainly, politeness, even genuine interest in what he's saying, but not the particular focused hunger he expected. It unsettles him in a way that I suspect is fairly new. I feel almost sorry for him. Almost. Iris calls it his confused puppy expression, and then spends several minutes making sure I know she said nothing of the sort. But it's Felix Crane who I keep noticing. He was at the Alderton dinner. He was at the concert, and I did not see him until suddenly he was there, the way you don't see something that's always in your peripheral vision until it moves. He is, according to the edges of my knowledge of this novel, the second lead, the friend, the loyal shadow, the character who exists to be better than the male lead in every measurable way except the one way that counts in romance novels, which is that the heroine doesn't choose him. He's an architect. I learned this from Iris. He designs buildings in a city a few hours from here and comes to these social events because they generate clients, and he sketches in his notebook when conversations bore him, which is apparently often. He does not sketch when I'm in the room. I noticed this at the Thursday garden party, where he's standing near the balustrade with a glass of wine he's barely touched, and I'm talking to an elderly baron about drainage systems because the baron is genuinely interesting once you get him started on agricultural infrastructure. And I glance over, and Felix Crane is watching me with an expression that I can only describe as careful fascination. When he sees me catch him, he doesn't look away. He raises the wine glass, a small acknowledged nod. Yes, I was watching. No, I don't intend to pretend otherwise. I almost laugh, which I think surprises both of us. Later, when the Baron has been claimed by his wife and I'm briefly alone near the rose arbor. This particular house has excellent rose arbors. I'm starting to understand why Victorians were obsessed with them. Felix Crane appears beside me. The Baron, he says, is going to be talking about you for a month. He's fascinating, I say. Drainage tiles. The innovation happening in drainage tiles right now is genuinely remarkable. There is a pause. Then Felix Crane says, completely without irony, "The cambered tile system?" I look at him. "For slope management in clay-heavy soil," he says. He's been corresponding with an engineer in the north about it. It's actually quite elegant when you see the cross-section. A pause. I design foundations, soil drainage matters. I think, oh, you're real. Not a plot device, not a stepping stone, a person. Felix Crane, I say, because I realize we haven't been formally introduced, which means this entire conversation has been slightly improper, which neither of us has mentioned. Vera Ashmont, he says, with the ghost of something in his voice that isn't quite amusement. We look at each other for a moment, an honest moment, neither of us performing anything. And then the party noise swells back in around us, and we are just two people standing near a rose arbor, which is perfectly ordinary and somehow also not. My mother summons me on day 7. This is how I think of it. A summons, because it is not a request. The note arrives in the morning. Come to my sitting room at 10. No, please. No reason given. Margaret Ashmont does not explain herself to people she controls, and she controls me almost completely. The house, the income, the legal documents that govern what I own and what I'm allowed to own. And she knows it, and she has always known it, and the previous Vera knew it too, and found ways to work around it that mostly involved being exactly what Margaret wanted. I walk in at 10. She is at her writing desk, which is her position of choice for conversations where she intends to have the advantage, and she looks up at me over her reading glasses with the expression of someone who has been doing calculations and is ready to show her work. Dominic Hale, she says, tells me you have been distracted. I've been enjoying the season, I say. He says you're not yourself. He's only known me for 7 days. She takes off her glasses. Margaret Ashmont without her glasses is a different proposition than Margaret. Ashmont with them, more direct, less inclined toward patience. Vera, the announcement is in 1 week. I need to know that you understand what is at stake. Tell me, I say pleasantly. In your words. A pause. She doesn't like that. The pleasantness, the invitation, the slight repositioning of the dynamic. She's used to Vera flinching. This family's standing, she says. This family's financial future. The Hale connection is worth more than you seem to understand, and you have spent the last decade wanting exactly this, and now you are, wandering around garden parties talking to an architect. Felix Crane is a very accomplished architect. When you should be securing this engagement. She leans forward. I will not allow you to throw away everything I have built for this family because of some mood. It's not a mood, I say. Then what is it? I look at her, and for a moment I feel genuine sorrow for her. Not sympathy for her methods, but something more complicated, which is the recognition that she loves this family fiercely, in the only language she knows how to speak, which is power and arrangement and the careful deployment of social capital. She built this. She genuinely believes she built it for me. It's a choice, I say. Mine. The silence in the room is the kind you can feel against your skin. You have no choices, she says quietly. That I haven't made possible. I know, I say, and I'm grateful for that, and I'm still going to make my own. I leave before she can respond. Outside the door, I stand in the hallway for a moment, with my back against the wall and my heart doing something complicated, and I think, 1 week. I have 1 week, and she is going to spend every minute of it applying pressure, and I need something to shift before the gala or I am going to end up exactly where the story put me. I need a way out that doesn't look like destruction. The interference comes from an unexpected direction, which should surprise me but doesn't. Celeste Marlowe comes to find me. We have, since the garden bench conversation, existed in a kind of careful peace, not friendship exactly, but the absence of hostility, which in this world has its own texture and warmth. She finds me in the library on day 8, when I'm reading an architectural survey of the county that I borrowed from Felix Crane 2 days ago, and haven't given back because I keep finding new things in it. She sits across from me. She has the look of someone who has made a decision and is not comfortable with it, but made it anyway. My aunt, she says, is trying to use me. I set the book down. To do what? To confirm that you're planning something against me. She's been talking to your mother. A pause. They've decided that your change in behavior means you're running a longer scheme, that the kindness is strategic, that you're going to do something worse at the gala than anything you've done before. I feel very tired suddenly, not physically, emotionally. The specific tiredness of being in a story that insists on reading you as the character you're refusing to be. I'm not planning anything against you. I know, she says. That's why I'm telling you. A beat. My aunt, Celeste continues, is going to Dominic. She's going to tell him that your recent behavior is a manipulation. That the apparent disinterest is designed to make him pursue you more. She meets my eyes, which is not inaccurate as a description of a manipulation tactic, even if you're not using it that way. I think about this. It's elegant, in a horrible way. The interference character has found the exact framing that uses my genuine behavior against me. If Dominic believes the withdrawal is calculated, he'll respond to it differently. He might even resist it. The plan, which was already complicated, becomes significantly more complicated. What does your aunt want from this? I ask. She wants me settled, Celeste says simply. She wants Dominic available. She's been hoping for a long time. She doesn't want the engagement to stick. So she's on my side by accident. She's on her own side, which currently overlaps with your side. Celeste pauses. I thought you should know. I look at her. The genuine straightforwardness of the Muslim woman is, I find, increasingly remarkable. She could have let this play out. It would have been better for her, in the immediate term, if I failed, and she came to tell me anyway. Thank you, I say. Don't thank me, she says. Just don't do anything that makes me regret. Fair, I say. After she leaves, I sit with the architectural survey open in my lap and think about the new shape of the problem. 9 days was already tight. 9 days with Celeste's aunt whispering in Dominic's ear is tighter. I need something that moves faster, and I need Margaret to have a reason to release the engagement that doesn't look like Vera failed. What she needs, I think, is a better match. Someone she wants more than Dominic Hale. I look at the survey. At the county map on the open page, the careful lines of buildings and roads and planned infrastructure. I think about an architect with a commission in the capital. An architect whose family, I have learned from 3 separate dinner conversations, has an old connection with the Ashmonts. Old enough to be advantageous, recent enough to be relevant. An architect who is considerably less brooding than Dominic Hale, and considerably more capable of a conversation about drainage tiles. I close the book carefully. I have an idea. It is a significant gamble. But the alternative is the winter gala in 9 days, with Margaret and Celeste's aunt and Dominic Hale all converging on a single moment, and the story pulling me toward the ending it has always written. I am not going to let it. Day 10 feels, briefly, like peace. Dominic finds me at the Brenton Music Hall, a small gathering, string quartet, the kind of evening that seems designed to make difficult conversations impossible, and he sits beside me with the demeanor of someone who has decided to stop being confused and start being direct. I want to understand something, he says, between the first and second piece. All right, I say. You're not. He stops. Tries again. You were very clear about what you wanted, before. He says before with the careful emphasis of someone navigating a minefield they can't fully see. And now you seem happy? I offer. He blinks. That wasn't the word I was reaching for. Settled, I say. Content. Not performing anything for anyone. He looks at me for a long moment. The quartet picks up again. Something light. Almost hopeful. And in the warm light of the room, with the music between us, I see something in his expression that isn't confusion. It's something more honest than confusion. A question he hasn't found the shape of yet. Do you actually want this? He says. The engagement, the arrangement, any of it, and here it is, the door, open. The moment where I could walk through it and dismantle everything neatly and cleanly. The moment that looks like the ending. I do not walk through it, because I know, if I say no here, the story becomes about Vera's rejection of Dominic. It becomes the scene everyone remembers. It gives Margaret the narrative she'll use against me. Vera sabotaged her own future. Vera threw away the best match she was ever going to get. I need Dominic to be the one who withdraws, and I need him to do it because he's chosen Celeste, not because I pushed him away. I want to be honest with you, I say instead. I think we've both been playing roles. He's quiet for a moment. What role are you playing? The one I was assigned, I say. I'm trying to stop. It's close enough to the truth that it lands without dishonesty, and Dominic Hale sits with it, and the music plays. And for a moment the evening is genuinely pleasant. Two people being real with each other in a room full of performance, which is its own kind of warmth. I almost let myself feel relieved. Then, at intermission, I see Celeste's aunt across the room, watching us with the expression of someone composing a narrative they intend to deploy. And I know that whatever piece this evening felt like, it is not the ending. Day 11. Margaret calls me to the sitting room again. This time she's standing. Felix Crane, she says before I'm through the door. I close it behind me, very calmly. What about him? You've been seen with him 4 times in 10 days. Her voice is level, but the level is the kind that precedes something structural giving way. You borrowed his book. You sat with him at the Thornton dinner for 45 minutes. You have been cultivating. We have interesting conversations, I say. You are engaged, she says. I'm pre-engaged, I say. The announcement hasn't been made. Vera. She crosses the room, and the word has a weight in it I haven't heard before. Not the social pressure. Weight. Not the financial control weight, but something older and more genuine, something that is almost fear. I have given everything for this family. I have arranged and managed and fought for this family, and this match is the culmination of 10 years of work. I need you to understand that. I do understand it, I say. Then why? Because I am not a piece on your board, I say, very quietly. I know you don't see it that way. I know you believe everything you've done has been for me. But you have arranged my life, my house, my finances, and now my marriage, and you have not once asked me what I want. The silence is enormous. What do you want? She says finally. Her voice is different now, smaller. Time, I say, and a choice. She looks at me for a long moment. The longest I have ever been looked at in this body, the kind of looking that is also reckoning. And then she says, very quietly, the gala is in 3 days. I know. If you walk in without Dominic, if there is no announcement. Then we plan something else, I say. Together, with my input. She turns away, goes to the window. Outside the garden is going gray in the afternoon light, the late roses hanging on stubbornly, and I watch my mother's reflection in the glass. The rigid set of her shoulders, the long pause of a person running calculations and finding new numbers. Felix Crane's family, she says finally. Not a question. The Crane family has the Alderton Commission, I say, and the new bridge contract in the capital, and connections in the northern counties that you have been wanting for 3 years. A pause, longer this time. He would need to ask, she says. He will, I say. And I hope very much that I am right. I find Felix Crane the next morning on the East Bridge, which is where Iris told me he goes to sketch when the weather is useful, meaning overcast enough to see light direction, but not actually raining. He's leaning on the railing with the notebook open, not sketching, looking at the water. He sees me coming. He doesn't look surprised. "You've been avoiding me for 2 days," he says. "I've been thinking," I say. "That tracks." He closes the notebook. You think the way some people brace for impact. Very still, very deliberate. I look at him for a moment. The morning light is the particular gray-blue of autumn before the color decides to commit, and he looks genuinely unbothered by the cold, which I find unreasonably appealing. "I need to ask you something," I say, "and it's going to sound calculated. It is calculated, but I want you to know that the other part, the part underneath the calculation, is real." He tilts his head. "Go on." "My mother needs me to have a match at the gala," I say. "Not Dominic Hale, someone. And the only person I want to walk into that room beside is you. Which is partly strategic, because your family is useful to her, and partly because you're the only person in this entire month who has talked to me like I'm a person and not a piece of architecture." The pause is long. A boat passes under the bridge, which gives the pause a rhythm. "That's the most honest thing anyone has said to me at one of these events," he says. "Possibly ever. I meant it to be." He looks at me, fully at me, the way he's been doing for days, but now without the pretense of coincidence. "You know I've been watching you." "I know." Watching someone not perform their role is... He stops. Interesting isn't the right word. It was like watching someone decide to stop holding their breath. I feel something move in my chest. The specific movement of being seen by someone who is not projecting, not constructing, not reading the scene they expected and fitting you into it. He's just looking at the actual thing. "The gala is in 2 days, I say. "I know. Will you come with me?" The bridge settles in the wind. Felix Crane looks at the water, then back at me, and he says, "I was going to ask you that question myself. I'd been working up to it for a week." I laugh. I don't mean to. It escapes before I can make it polite, and it's a real laugh, too loud for the setting. And Felix Crane's face does something I haven't seen it do in all the watchful days of this month, which is open, fully, into something warm and uncalculated and entirely genuine. "You have terrible timing," I say. "I build things slowly," he says. I double-check my measurements. "How's the measurement on this one?" He smiles. "Good," he says. "Very good, actually. The night before the gala, Dominic Hale comes to Ashmont House. He is announced, which is unusual. Social calls at this hour are supposed to be informal, but he is asked to be announced, which means he's not pretending this is informal. And I come down to the parlor, and he's standing by the fireplace, in a way that means he's rehearsed this. "Celeste Marlowe," he says, when I walk in. I sit down. "Yes. You knew," he says. "It's not an accusation. More like a confirmation." "I thought so," I say. He's quiet for a moment. The fire makes the room warm and amber, and he looks, not like the brooding magnetic figure from the first chapter, but like a person who's been doing a lot of accounting and has come to present the results. "I want to apologize to you," he says, "for assuming that because you wanted this, I didn't need to examine whether I did." "That's a better apology than I expected," I say. "I've been thinking." He sits down across from me. "For a week I've been thinking about why you changing made me follow you, try harder. And I realized that what I was responding to wasn't you specifically. It was the novelty of not being wanted at." "Wanted at," I repeat. "Wanted at," he says. "That's it. That's the exact phenomenon." He makes a slight, helpless gesture. "I've been wanted at for as long as I can remember, and you just stopped, and I didn't know what to do with that." "And Celeste?" I ask. Something shifts in his face. Something genuine. Something that's been there the whole time, and is only now being named. Celeste has always just wanted me, not what I represent, not the position. Just, he stops. I didn't know how to see it. I think I required contrast. "You're welcome," I say. He looks at me. Then he laughs, surprised by it, short and real, and something in the room settles. "I'm going to speak to her," he says. "Tomorrow, before the gala." "Good," I say. "And you?" He glances at me. "Felix Crane." "He's very accomplished," I say. "He is," Dominic says, with a tone that suggests he is finding this entire situation both incomprehensible and Possibly, correct. He stands. I hope. He stops. I think you're going to be all right. Yes, I say. I know. After he leaves, I sit by the fire alone for a while, doing nothing extraordinary. Just sitting, in the warmth, in the quiet, with the sound of the house settling around me. I think about the Vera who lived here before I did, who wanted this man with an intensity that became her whole shape. And I feel something for her. Not quite grief, not quite relief. Something more like, I'm going somewhere you couldn't reach. I'm taking your life somewhere better. I'm sorry it cost you everything it did. Then I go upstairs to decide what to wear to the gala. She's in my room when I get there. Sitting in the chair by the window, in the dark, not having lit a candle, and that alone tells me something, because Margaret Ashmont does not sit in the dark. She sits in well-lit rooms where she can see everything clearly. Dominic came, she says. Yes, he's going to withdraw from the arrangement. Yes, she's quiet for a long moment, outside the window. The city is doing its late evening things. The sound of carriages. A fragment of music from somewhere distant, the very particular dark blue of the sky right before it goes fully black. Felix Crane's father, she says finally, served on the county council with your grandfather. I know, I say. They were not friendly. I know that too. They reconciled before your grandfather died. I found the letters in the estate papers last week. I sit on the edge of the bed. I've been doing my research. A pause, longer than the others. You've changed, she says. Not an accusation, not even entirely a complaint. More like someone noting a fact they're still in the process of accepting. I woke up, I say, for the second time this month, to the second person who doesn't understand exactly what that means and understands it entirely. She's quiet for a long time. Then she says, quietly, to the window, not to me, I wanted you to have what I built. I know. I didn't ask you what you wanted to build. No, I say, you didn't. Another long silence. Then she stands, smooths her skirt with the automatic precision of a woman who does not allow herself to look undone in front of anyone, and she crosses to the door. On the threshold she pauses. Felix Crane will need to ask formally, she says. The correct way, through the proper channels. He will, I say, I will. Consider it, she says, properly. It is as close to a concession as Margaret Ashmont has ever become a conversation with me, in this body or any other. And I know it, and she knows it, and we let it be exactly what it is. Good night, Mother, I say. Good night, Vera, she says, and she closes the door behind her. The Winter Gala is everything the novel promised. Enormous, glittering, the kind of event that is performing its own grandeur so hard that it's almost funny if you know how to look at it sideways. Ice sculptures, string ensemble, 300 people in formal wear doing the elaborate social dance of managing perceptions. I walk in with Felix Crane on my arm, and the room does a thing. Not a dramatic thing, not a gasping, visible thing, but a small, collective recalibration. Because everyone in this room has read the same story I was supposed to be in, and the story said I would walk in on Dominic Hale's arm, and I have not, and Dominic is across the room, looking at Celeste Marlowe with the undisguised expression of a man who has recently figured something important out, and Celeste is looking back at him with the careful hope of someone who can't quite trust what she's seeing yet. The story is not happening the way the story was supposed to happen. It feels, quietly, like a victory. You're smiling, Felix Crane says. I'm allowed to smile, I say. You're smiling the way you do when something has gone exactly as you planned. Everything has gone approximately as I planned, I say, with significant improvisation. That's architecture, he says. The plan and the improvisation together. I look at him. He's looking at the room with the particular attention of someone cataloging it, the sight lines, the traffic flow, the way the light moves between the columns, and I think, this is who he is actually. Not performing anything, not angling for anything, just genuinely here, genuinely present, cataloging the world with the same care he gives to everything. Felix, I say, what are you thinking about right now? He pauses. The southeast column has a crack in the base that someone has plastered over. It should be looked at. And another pause. You. What about me? He turns to look at me directly, that full, unperforming look that I have been receiving for a month now and have not gotten used to, and do not want to get used to, and hope very much never becomes ordinary. I'm thinking, he says, that I spent a month watching you refuse to be who everyone needed you to be, and I'm thinking that requires a specific kind of, courage isn't the right word, steadiness. And I'm thinking that I would like, very much, to know you for a long time. The ensemble picks up. The room swirls. 300 people performing their social grandeur around us. I would like that too, I say. He offers his hand, not for a dance. We're not near the dancing, just offered, open, a simple thing, and I take it. Here is where I should tell you that everything resolved neatly in the gala. It didn't. Margaret spent 45 minutes deep in conversation with Felix Crane's mother, which began frostily, and ended with them comparing notes on the county council, which is either a good sign or a sign that they've decided to form an alliance against me, and I genuinely cannot tell which. Celeste's aunt tried to speak to Dominic twice and was intercepted both times, once by Celeste herself, once, inexplicably, by Iris, who had somehow obtained a server's uniform and was present at the gala in an entirely unauthorized capacity, which I will be addressing later. Dominic asked Celeste to dance. She said yes. I watched from across the room, and what I felt was clean, not the sadness I expected, not the complicated residue of a feeling I'd inherited from the body I'd woken in. Something cleaner than that, the satisfaction of watching a story arrive at its right shape, even if it wasn't the shape that had been planned for me. You're doing it again, Felix said. Smiling? Smiling and thinking complicated things simultaneously. Both are allowable, I said. Simultaneously? Especially simultaneously. He didn't say anything for a moment. We were standing near the windows, which faced the garden, which was frosted tonight. The roses gone. The beds put to sleep for winter. The whole space quiet and silver, under a moon that was almost full. This is going to be complicated, he said. I said. Your mother is not going to make any of it easy. No, I said. But she's going to make it possible. That's as much as I can ask for. What about after? After what? He made a small gesture. After the gala. After the engagement is dissolved. After the formal channels. After all of this, he met my eyes. What happens then? It was, I thought, an excellent question. The novel didn't have an answer for it, because the novel had never considered Vera Ashmont getting an after. She was supposed to be a story's worth of obstacle, and then a story's worth of consequence, and then gone. Removed from the narrative like a splinter, like something that had served its purpose and was no longer needed. I was still here. Then, I said, we make something new. The formal dissolution of the Ashmont-Hale arrangement takes 11 days to navigate and costs Margaret a dinner with the Alderton family and 3 letters she'd rather not have written. I am not present for most of this. She handles it in the particular way she handles things, which is absolutely and without visible difficulty, which I have learned to read as her equivalent of affection. Dominic and Celeste's engagement is announced at the Thornton New Year gathering. I hear about it from Iris, who hears about it from the household networks that are apparently far more efficient than any formal communication system. Celeste sends me a note. It's short. She doesn't do lengthy correspondence, and it says, I wanted you to know first. Thank you for what you did, even if you'd deny doing anything. I hope you are well. I think you will be. I read it twice, and then put it in the writing desk, and don't think about it for 3 days, and then take it out and read it again. Felix Crane submits a formal letter of intention to Margaret Ashmont on a Tuesday, which is, he tells me later, because he'd done the calculations. And Tuesday had the best ratio of her being in a good mood to being occupied with other correspondence. I ask him how long he'd been calculating this, and he says, approximately 3 weeks, with the tone of a man who doesn't find this unreasonable, and I find this so characteristic of him, that I can't speak for a moment. Margaret accepts the letter on Thursday. With conditions, because she is Margaret Ashmont and conditions are her natural language, but conditions that are more about timeline and property settlement than about control, and conditions that she presents to me as a starting point for negotiation, which is, I think, the closest she is capable of coming to saying, I'm trying. Iris negotiates the conditions with her, because Iris has apparently been doing this her whole life, and is better at it than I am. I stay out of it and let her work. On the first genuinely warm day of the year, early April, a sky that can't decide between blue and gray, and settles on both simultaneously. Felix Crane comes to find me in the garden. The roses have started their tentative beginning. Tiny curled things, still more idea than flower, barely red yet at the tips. He sits down beside me on the stone bench, the same bench where I found Celeste back in October, when the roses were going bronze at the edges, and everything was still unsettled, and I was still learning what it meant to be. In a story that I refuse to follow, the Alderton Commission is confirmed, he says. I know. Your letter arrived yesterday. I'm going to need to be in the capital for most of next spring. I know. He's quiet for a moment, looking at the tentative roses. Are you going to tell me what you're thinking? I'm thinking, I say, that this is approximately the spot where I realized I wasn't going to let the story write me off. And now I'm sitting in the same spot, and it's spring, and the roses are starting, and everything that was supposed to be impossible turned out to just be difficult. Difficult is manageable. He looks at me, that full, unperforming look. Difficult is your natural habitat, he says. Yes, I say. Drainage tiles, complicated mothers, refusal to perform for an audience. I'm very comfortable here. He laughs. The real laugh, the one I've been collecting evidence of for months, the one that's warm without effort, and I lean into the warmth of it. He takes my hand, not dramatically, just takes it the way he's been doing for the last 3 weeks. Like it's already ordinary, like we've been doing this for a long time, and the only thing that's changed is we're not pretending we haven't. The garden is coming back. The city is making its quiet spring noises beyond the wall. And somewhere in this city, Dominic Hale is with Celeste Marlowe, and Iris is negotiating my future with the focused efficiency of a person who has never met a situation she couldn't work, and my mother is writing letters to people who are useful, and the story that was written for me is dissolving in the April light, becoming something else entirely. I keep looking for the crack in the southeast column, I say. Felix pauses. In the ballroom? Why? You noticed it at the gala. I keep going back to check on it. He's quiet for a moment. You've been worried about structural integrity. I've been worried about the building, I say. I'll look at it this week, he says. If it's what I think it is, it's an easy repair. The plaster just needs to come off so we can see what's actually there. So we can fix it properly. He agrees. I look at him. He's looking at the roses. The tentative beginning roses. The roses that are more idea than flower. Still figuring out what they're going to be. Felix, I say. Yes. The thing you said at the gala, about knowing me for a long time. I remember. I want that, I say. I just wanted to say it directly, without calculation, without it being part of anything. Just that. I want that. He turns to look at me, and there is something in his face that I don't have a word for yet. Something quiet and certain, the expression of a person who has been building slowly and has just confirmed that the foundation is good, exactly as measured. He reaches over and straightens the lapel of my coat. It's been sitting crooked since the garden gate, and I hadn't noticed, and he has, because he notices everything. And the gesture is so ordinary and so specifically his, so grounded in the physical reality of this exact moment, that I think, yes, this is what I chose. This is what wasn't written for me and is therefore mine. I know, he says, that's why I'm still here. The April light shifts. The roses lean, barely, toward the warmth. I don't look for the story anymore. I already know how this one ends.